Good morning, everybody. On behalf of the Lake Effect Capital Partners, I would like to take a moment to thank the Miller and Johnson families, as well as Mr. Bob and Mr. Schumacher and the Southside Law Firm for inviting us here today to present our findings for you. First off, I'd like to introduce our team. We have, at the far right, Patrick Kelly, who has conducted an in-depth due diligence on this deal. Next, we have Cheng Gu, who has put together a comprehensive financial strategy for your company. Next, we have Shane Rourke and Mingying Xu, who have worked tirelessly to develop realistic goals for what our valuations are going to be. And finally, I am Dale Stewart. I'll be the lead negotiator to optimize the sales terms and ensure a timely close on this deal. So now we'd like to walk through the agenda really quickly. We will start off by assessing what the true value of the offer on the table is. We'll compare that to what we think is the fair market value for your company. We'll walk through the strategic alternatives and the financial outcomes that are associated with them. And then finally, we'll give you our recommendation for what we think you should do and discuss how it satisfies the objectives of all parties involved. As you know, Autobahn has extended an offer to your corporation for $160 million without the assumption of debt. This means that part of the proceeds from the sale will go towards paying off the debt. Your current net debt is about $95 million, which means $65 million will go towards the equity for your shareholders. We know you were pretty unimpressed with this number, and so I would now like to bring up Shane to discuss what we think is the fair market value of your corporation.
Thank you, Dale. I'd like to direct your attention to the chart before you, where we have 4 valuation numbers based on 2 different valuation techniques. Those techniques are the blue sky market-based value, as well as the traditional discounted cash flow intrinsic value of the equity in your firm. The blue sky valuation method, as you may know, is a combination of the total net tangible assets in your firm combined with a goodwill value, which is a multiple of your earnings before tax in 2012. You see that our analysis shows that in your hands, the market value of the market value of Fastlane is about $104 million. If Autobahn were to take advantage of synergies and purchase the firm, they would be able to save or increase the value of equity by $6 million. That would be a total of $110 million equity. According to the discounted cash flow method, the traditional intrinsic value of the firm in your hands is about $81 million. In Autobahn's hands, the intrinsic value would be about $94 million as they take advantage of those synergies. Taking all of these valuations into consideration, we've determined that the fair market value of the equity in your firm is $110 million. Now that, compared with Autobahn's offer of $65 million, means that they are $45 million short of what we believe your equity is worth. So that's the story of the consolidated operations at Fastlane. So let's take a look at what it looks like for the US and Europe operations separately. You see again that we've used the blue sky market-based valuation as well as the intrinsic value. You'll notice that for your US operations, the market-based value as well as the intrinsic value are roughly the same. What that means is the market is willing to pay you about what it's worth to you in your hands. However, you notice a large discrepancy in the intrinsic value of the Europe operations in your hands as well compared to the market value that a company may be willing to pay. So what that means is Autobahn, in their hands, may be willing to pay a market value of $50 million, which is a $13 million premium over what it's worth to you right now. So that's sort of what it would look like if you were to sell only the EU operations. I'd like to hand it over to my colleague Patrick to talk about why that might be a good option.
Thank you, Shane. So in discussing whether or not to sell the whole company or a part of the company, first we should consider the major buyer groups that might be interested. The first of our major buyer groups would be dealership groups like Autobahn. Now, these groups are highly active in this market. They have large budgets ranging from $10 to $500 million. They also happen to have pre-existing relationships with the OEMs, the car manufacturers, who have right of first refusal in any transaction. We feel this is the best group of buyers to target because of all of these attributes. The second group would be large public companies. Now, they're simply not that active in this space. They've only had 6 transactions of $100 million or more over the past 10 years. So a transaction there would be a bit difficult to arrange and maybe hard to come by. The third group would be your financial buyers. And historically, the OEMs have been resistant to approving financial buyers from entering this market. On top of that, and perhaps more importantly, Fastlane Inc. already has a debt-to-equity ratio close to 1-to-1. That means that there's already a significant amount of leverage on the books, and these financial buyers would look to employ a leveraged buyout strategy, which would require them to purchase the company with a significant amount of debt. The debt that's already on your books, coupled with the insufficient cash flows that we've analyzed, will show that under a leveraged buyout, the cash flows would be insufficient to pay off the debt in the time window required and give these types of buyers the return that they often look for, which is approximately 30% on investment. Now, when we're talking about whether to sell the company in pieces, we should look at the market dynamics working in the US right now versus in Europe. Currently, the United States, it's on its way out of recession. The economy is on an upswing, consumer confidence is growing, and because of the past few years of poor economy, there's actually a very old vehicle fleet in the United States, and consumers are looking to replace their cars. It just so happens that consumer credit is starting to flow, so we feel there are going to be returns in the US company in the near term that have not yet been achieved. Contrast that with the European operations. Now, Europe is still deeply mired in recession, and that's not looking to really turn around anytime soon. Unemployment is at all-time highs, as high as 25% in some localities in Spain. Now, there's also a glut of cars in the market because of this, which is putting downward pressure on car prices and decreasing profitability. Because of this, dealership groups are looking to obtain synergies and consolidate. If you look at your United States operations, you have 4 highly productive dealerships in your home state of Southern California. Now, these dealerships, within these dealerships, you have $29 million worth of net assets that are producing cash flows that, when discounted to the present day, are worth $57 million in your hands. Contrast that to your European operations, where you have $34 million of net assets that are only worth $27 million in your hands today. In other words, the cars on the lots in Europe are worth more than the cash flows they're going to produce in perpetuity. So our recommendation in this case is to hold on to the US portion of your company, because that company looks to appreciate in value over the near term, and actually take advantage of the fact that you have unlocked value sitting in Europe. Now, that $27 million in discounted cash flows, you could get, as Shane had discussed, $50 million of cash from Autobahn, who is very keen to obtain your German operations so that they can extract the synergies that they're looking for. The next slide here, what we want to talk about is, do you have to sell it all? You know, you weren't soliciting an offer, you were given an offer. So you can always maintain the status quo. Maintaining the status quo, you keep your operations, but you do not achieve your goals of immediate liquidity that I know you've been looking for. I know a lot of the owners have been pushing for more dividends, and we've discovered that you really can't push the dividends much farther than they currently are. The other option would be to sell the whole company to a company like Autobahn or another strategic buyer. Now, Autobahn's offer was for $160 million. We'd have to push that offer to about $205 million in order for you to get fair market value for your equity in such a transaction. And in such a transaction, you'll end up with about $110 million to split amongst the owners, but you're left with no remaining assets and no business to run. And we're not sure that that's entirely what you're looking for. We feel the best option is a bit of a win-win. Sell the Europe-only operations to Autobahn. You get to keep your US company, which is currently valued at $60 million and on the uptick, and you can actually get yourself some immediate liquidity of $50 million at the bare minimum. If you decide to go this route, What you do is you keep your U.S. operations, as I had mentioned, and the Europe operations are sold for $50 million. Now, just dividing it equally amongst the ownership right now, that would mean that the families will get $45 million cash to put in your pockets or to invest in other businesses or to use at your discretion. And our two managing partners here, Mr. Jim Bob will get $2.5 million, and Mr. Schumacher will also get $2.5 million. Now, we understand there's also some desire for some of the owners to get more control, maybe less cash, and that's something we can certainly work out in any kind of deal structure. So,
Patrick, can I ask a question?
Yes, please.
So the $50 million, is that debt-free? Are we going to have
that would be debt-free. That would be the value. That $50 million would come out of about a $75 million sale price. You pay off your European debt, which is $24 million, and you walk away.
They're going to offer us $75 million.
That would have to be the total amount of the offer. Yes, you are correct, ma'am.
Okay.
I want to think when you talk about the synergies, what makes you think that you can get Autobahn to pay for 100% of the synergies they're bringing to the table? Why should they pay us for the value they're bringing to the table without creating some sort of competitive process?
It's a very good question. I appreciate you asking that. In fact, our estimates here are somewhat conservative. We're looking at Europe right now is a deal edge trading between a 3 and a 5 multiple. All these numbers are based on a hedge of a 4 multiple in between there. On top of that, there are synergies that Autobahn can achieve that we cannot quite quantify. The $6 million synergy we're speaking about is based on a $1.5 million reduction of back office expenses that we can predict with 100% accuracy. So we feel that you should be paid 100% for the certain synergies, and it's left up to them and their operations to achieve on top of that. Plus, we feel that in negotiations, we would be able to push more for that 5 multiple and get you maximum value.
Have you looked at doing significant add-backs to EBITDA when you're presenting and running your
We absolutely have. Meng, if you could click on the adjustments there. These are the adjustments that we've made to your EBITDA cash flows. And Chang, since you worked so closely with this, if you might want to address this for us.
Yes, sure. For the blue sky method, we basically add up the real asset value that is currently valued at a premium beyond our book value. And for the inventory, because this is we're selling this company to European companies, and they are using the LIFO standard. So we added up $4.5 million of the LIFO reserve to our inventory calculation. And for non-recurring expense, because they are just one-time expense, and we do not have to take that into further consideration, and we also added those back.
Any more questions on the adjustments?
It's also worth noting, as part of your question, if we move back to the valuation sheet, that 104 and 110 do not symbolize the upward bounds of our range. Those are the means. So if you looked at the top range for the without synergies, that's about $110 million. So we feel that that would be a fair point with which we could negotiate that they will get their part of the upside of the synergies, as well as we should have some of those considerations as well.
That actually was pretty much the end of our presentation. I was just simply going to summarize our findings in the last slide.
Question for you. Accepting an offer or counter offer from Autobahn versus maybe going out and doing a broad auction process, do we run the risk that Autobahn accepts the offer, or our counter offer goes down the path, doesn't get all the way there, and we damaged ourselves when we try to go out and do this in a broader process?
Well, would one of you like to address the that question?
Yeah, I suppose that is something to consider, but we like to use the expression that a bird in the hand is worth 2 in the bush. So there's an offer on the table that we weren't necessarily soliciting. We would like to initially go back to them and get what we believe is maximum value. I mean, I believe that is definitely a consideration. The auction could bring more, but this is certainly the first thing we would.
And Shane, just to add to that, Autobahn has really a special situation. We can extract these synergies from them. They have operations in Germany. They sell the same type of car you do, so there's no boundaries there, or no barriers there with the OEM. And really, we feel like they are positioned to be the best buyer for the European segment. That's why we're recommending, in part, the European sale only, because in all honesty, they're somewhat disinterested in the US operations, and we feel that they might want to underpay for that. But we think that they are so keen to take over your German dealerships, your 9 German dealerships, that that's probably our best negotiating point, and we can maximize the value return to your firm with that positioning.
Is there anything that we can do to get the shareholders some money out of the U.S.? I mean, is there a real estate play here? Is there a dividend recap play here? Is there anything we can think through to get the shareholders something?
Dale did look into our dividend recap, but before I allow him to address that, or ask him to address that, you only have 4 dealerships in the United States, all in Southern California, that are being highly productive right now. So we wouldn't really recommend any sell-off of real estate there. Your operations are pretty much running at full tilt there, but Dale did look into a dividend recap, and if you'd like him to talk about it.
Yes, it did. Very similar to the leverage buyout scenario. At the current moment, we have your company has far too much debt on the books and would not allow for a significant amount of dividends to be realized by the shareholders if we further leverage the company. We would risk moving past the the coverage ratio, which would put the company at risk of default. So we don't think at this point that that's a strong strategic play.
We also don't recommend pulling more money out of your cash flows. We calculated that you're currently issuing dividends at about a 70% payout ratio, and pushing it much further than that would jeopardize the future growth of the company.
Who will be negotiating with Audubon on the team?
That would be me, sir.
And this is the team?
This is
we get this team.
You get us.
This is all of us.
Great.
And we have some excellent designers in the back office as well, too.
You know, it does go without saying that taking our advice into consideration will not only free up some liquidity that I know that you're seeking, it will also allow you to diversify your portfolio. So perhaps there are other ventures out there outside of the auto industry that you could pursue with that money. And furthermore, it will maximize the value of your total assets currently. And that's why we think this is the strongest play right now for your company. Furthermore, since we're on the topic, realizing that the United States will appreciate in value over the next couple of years, and we think that a position to go long on this would be a smart one, you can bring us back after we do such a fantastic job on the European sale, and we'll sell the U.S. for you as well at a much higher valuation. How does that sound?
That's why he's our best negotiator. Any more questions?
Well, it's been a real pleasure. Thank you very much for your time.